Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, good day, good everything. My name is Jason Weiss. I am the host of the Ask Jason Weiss show. Although I am an attorney, a coach, a fractional GC, a mediator, and lots of other things, nothing stated here today is legal advice. You have not hired myself or my guest, Jeff. You have not hired either one of us as your attorney yet. So you have no attorney-client privilege, and everything here is educational only. This is not legal advice. You can feel free to reach out to Jeff and or myself for legal matters, and we would be happy to help you depending on the case. But again, nothing said today is legal advice. So today I have with me Jeff. And Jeff, like me, is a fractional general counsel is the best way to put it. Now, I know what I think a fractional general counsel is, so I'm going to keep that to myself. But, Jeff, let's just start, right? This show is about, going ahead and not scrambling to retain counsel. So first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then tell us what a fractional general counsel is in your world.
Sure. Thanks for having me. Business and litigation attorney, the firm that we built that continues to grow over the last 8 years is split in half. Litigation on one side and business law, or as you put it, fractional general counsel work on the other.
Now, when you say fractional general counsel work on the other, couldn't that also be part of the general counsel work? I mean, litigation, couldn't that also be part?
It can be. I haven't had that type of relationship, I think, with clients in the past, but overseeing litigation does come up, especially if it's out of state or just managing counsel. But I think to your overarching question, my background, I spent 10 years as an in-house attorney, 2 privately held, 1 publicly traded company, worked at a C-suite in Europe, Luxembourg for a while. So I have this wealth of experience working for large institutions. And what I often see is smaller companies, say, doing $5 million plus a year to, $30, $40 million a year in revenue, will engage attorneys on an ad hoc basis, as needed, to your point, when something bad happens. And it works, right? It works until it doesn't, and then you get sued, and then issues get uncovered of why didn't you do this, where are the controls for this, regulator comes into play, and there's a lot of cleanup. So it's, to some extent, it's a chicken and the egg situation, right? Attorneys are expensive, can't afford them if you're not making money, but at some point, as that revenue increases, having some support that understands your business is important to that sustained growth. Otherwise, you just have a house of cards, and the first time a gust of wind comes, you're going to really see the impact on not just revenue, but also just bandwidth, right? Lawsuits are time-consuming on internal resources, or can be, especially if you don't have your house in order.
And that's very telling. There are so many things that you touched on that, unpack, and I kind of feel like I'm talking, to somebody who gets it, because, I do similar things, different, areas, different whatever. And look, Coke and Pepsi and 7-Up and Sprite, they can all coexist. So, 15 fractional attorneys across the United States, they can all exist, even if it's 150. But again, you touched on it. When you get that phone call from the client, and we'll just call it company, right? You get the phone call from the company, and they're like, "Hey, Jeff, we signed this agreement, and now they breached it. What do we do?" Because you have that institutional knowledge that you already know, because you helped draft the agreement. You gave them pointers. You were involved in the negotiation. You know all the people. You know your client's threshold for pain, or for litigation, or for things. You don't have to first spend 2 hours learning it. You're like, "Oh, that's the contract I did between you and the other company, and yeah, they're clearly in default because they didn't make their payment, and according to the agreement, if I'm remembering correctly, let me pull it up on my screen. Oh yeah, you got to send them a 5-day written notice via FedEx and email. Have you done it yet? Nope. Okay, great. Let me start." And you're already in the business. You know it. And that's where I see fractional is phenomenal. Look, if you can hire an in-house counsel and have him or her there for every second of every day, more power to you. But most organizations cannot. And they still want that availability, and they don't want to have to worry about every time they pick up the phone to call you, it's going to cost them $100, $200, $300 when it's potentially built in or part of the service that you do. So back to that, talk about how do you get to like know the client? What are some of the things that you do when a new client sees you on the show and they're like, Jeff, oh my God, like you're what we need on this show, So I'll want no referral fees, no nothing. I just want to know that hey, I saw you on the Ask Jason Weiss show, and I need a lawyer. What's your normal thing? Like, how do you do it? I saw you on the show, and I'm a small business owner. We do $1 million a year in revenue, but we need legal help, and we're tired of LegalZoom. We're tired of prepaid legal, and we can't afford the big boys at $1,200 an hour. Help us.
Yeah, so I think a big part of when I evaluate prospective clients is understanding what their need is and whether or not we're the right fit. It's taken years to really identify who that ideal client is, what that avatar looks like. But it's simply a company a bit more mature than that. I spoke with one recently, and they refer to themselves multiple times as we're a small startup type business. It's not really my wheelhouse. Like, can I provide service to them? Sure. But it's not going to be the best fit for us or for them. The companies that we work with are typically, there is already an existing C-suite of some sort. Maybe it's 2 people, maybe it's 5 people. It just depends on the size of the company, but they get it, right? We're not the first attorney they've ever worked with. They understand that legal can add value. And then once that right type of relationship is identified and we are engaged, it's just learning their business. No different than if I was hired as an employee going to work for a company, right? You look at existing documents and templates. You meet everyone as part of leadership. Whether you're going to work with them on a day-to-day or not, doesn't really matter. I think just having a good handle on organizational makeup is important. Meet key players, understand where they've spent a lot of money on legal in the past or issues that have come up, see if there's opportunity to help close those gaps. So it's dynamic in the sense that it's a function of what the client's looking for. As a general rule, and I don't know if I read this somewhere or if it's just me coming up with a number, but I look at companies as 1% of top line revenue at a minimum should be spent on legal. So if you're making $1 million a year, spending 10 grand on legal in a year isn't crazy. You're talking about $800 a month. Or you get in a little bit of dispute with someone, there's some back and forth, and it gets resolved, and you're out of pocket 10 grand. Hopefully, you learn from that lesson.
Now, when you said those numbers, that's not part of the the settlement for the breach. That's just actual legal spend, right? Because I don't think you can factor in, hey, we got sued because we did something and we're going to settle for $5,000 and it's a learning curve and all of that. You don't count that as part of your legal budget. Your legal budget would just be hiring Jeff and his firm.
Legal budget would be the line item on your P&L that says attorney or law firm or legal expense, some type of nomenclature like that. Not whatever amount you might have to pay to a third party.
Correct.
So that's kind of where I look at it. And does that make sense for us? It's also a function of expectations. So I had a call recently with someone where they're paying a ton in legal bills for a certain reason, and the person does A, B, and C for them. And it's like, okay, well, I think we can do that at a much more attractive price point. And this is our value add, right? I have a team. The team is excellent, and it's skilled enough where it doesn't necessarily need to be me reviewing every document or responding to every email. And there's a cost to that. Same if you want quick turnaround, right? There's a cost to quick turnaround. Turnaround being, what's our SLA? You send a document, If you don't know the attorney and you're just a guy off the street, they have to do the initial consultation, send you a retainer agreement. A lot of attorneys are just antiquating their processes. That takes a day or two. You make your retainer payment. You then send them the information, and you're like a week and a half into it, and you even had some sort of conversation about what's going on or how you want to proceed. Versus, to your point before, we know the business. We've worked with them many times, understand risk tolerances, how they deal with situations, where their negotiation points are, what we've done on past deals, right? There's a lot of intelligence there. And because of that, we're able to apply it to the current request and turn it in a day or an hour or 2 days. And it doesn't require those initial onboarding steps. But there's a cost to that, right? In order to be able to hit desired turnaround times and have people available when needed, you need people on the bench to do so. So, it's a bit of a push-pull, but that's why I really vet out prospective clients to make sure that we're the right fit for them.
Yeah. And I mean, do you do, and I'll just throw it out there so, that listeners can know, do you do maybe like the subscription based or the monthly based where, like I have a client, for example, that, they want 40 hours a month from me and I charge them, $8,000. If you do the math, that's $200 an hour or whatever it is, which is way below my hourly rate, but because they need a set amount. So I guess the question is, not for litigation, because that could take on a beast of its own. But if someone said, hey, look, we just want to have you ready to go at all points in time, and we want to send over agreements, and you all agree that, yeah, it looks like you need 50 hours a month. Do you work with clients, and you don't have to talk about your prices, but hey, I want to spend $10,000 a month. What can I get for that?
Yeah, and many times I'll try to help them. We'll reverse engineer. If your budget is X, it's not just quantity, right? I think a lot of lawyers have this mindset of my bill rate is X dollars an hour. I work Y hours, so the price is Z.
No.
X is Y equals Z.
Well, hang on, and let's go down that path. I agree with you. Not most lawyers, or not some lawyers. I think it's most lawyers are of that mindset. Why? Because we get out of law school, and for those of us that didn't just open up our own firm right out of law school, we go to a firm, and what's the first thing that you talk about with the firm when you're there? You must bill 2,000 hours. And look, I'm 25 years.
Which
What?
is crazy. I mean, billing
It's crazy. So I'm 25 years out of school. So let's just say when I was first out of school, I think it was like $240 an hour, right? Right out of school, $240 an hour. So if you do the math, at $240 an hour times 2,000, that's what, 480,000, and you write off, let's say 20% as a partner, so you're at 430, let's say, or 420. And then I should be earning a third of that. So, you do the math, and that's where it was all about. So we as attorneys that we're working, we care about our hourly rate. We care about how much we're billing. We care about, everything else, because everything was tied to our performance and you needed to get it. So if you wanted to earn 150,000, you had to up your rate, you had to bill more, you had to do this, you had to do that. Where now you have your own thing and you don't have to worry about that. You need to make sure you keep your staff happy and paid and the lights on and insurance is in place and, drive a nice car and do all of this. But there's different ways to skin that cat. And I think it all starts with right out of law school, right? Where do you go to work for your first job?
So I had a little bit of a different maturation process. I went right in-house after school. I didn't bill my first hour or minute, however you want to think of it, until I opened my law firm. So atypical approach, but to your general point of billing on an hourly basis, we'll do that. Especially you mentioned litigation before. We've done litigation in other matters. The easiest way, I think for both sides, is hourly, at least to some extent, unless the client wants to come out of pocket a significant amount right out of the gate, right? Because then the attorney's taking the risk. But for the type of subscription work that we do, especially once we have a good handle on the client and their business and the cadence at which they're seeking support, I'm pretty good at saying, let's look at this as a bucket, and then we'll look at your budget and kind of make it work for both sides. I don't think there's a one size fits all. It's a function of the business. It's a type of work that they're getting. I've had clients that were sending me massive Fortune 50 agreements on multiple times a week. And that's a ton of heavy lifting to go through those agreements, especially when there's complex issues that we haven't vetted out before. And we got to talk about it with the client and understand what their tolerance, and then they don't know, and it's a lot of back and forth. So that's arduous work versus, things come up, there's a dispute here, there's an HR issue, there's a compliance question. So it really just depends, not to take the cop-out answer. But I think what we're good is showing flexibility and coming up with something that's bespoke for a client's needs.
Right. And look, I'm part of a legal team for a client of mine, right? I'm just part of the legal team. But one of the things that I get to do is look over bills. And one of the biggest pain points that we have with attorneys that are doing work is we're not questioning that you did the work. We're not questioning that you called the judge's office and talked to the JA about, when trial could be set for, because you need witnesses and you need all that. But why do I need a 26-year attorney who's picking up the phone and calling the JA and speaking for 15 minutes when I can have a paralegal, a legal secretary, or even a junior attorney do that at $100 an hour, $185 an hour, $250 an hour? And I think that's where businesses are headed, right? Because with the use of AI, with the use of all these tools, with the use of whatever else it is, we're always trying to not nickel and dime, but make sure we're paying for what we pay, right? Again, I don't need Jeff to pick up the phone and call the JA to find out where I land on the calendar.
Just so we're clear, Jeff doesn't do that.
Exactly. Jeff does not do that. Jeff has Mary or Steve or Bob as part of his team to do that. And Jeff probably, not putting words in his mouth, probably does not bill for something like that. Or if they do, they'll bill it at something that's reasonable. Again, the work has to be done. And I'm doing this with bills that I'm reviewing right now for my client, because my client got some exorbitant bills and they're like, look, we want to pay you to review these bills to save money. And even at $400 an hour that I'm working for this client, I'm still going to save them $6,000 on a bill. And I guess that's what it's all about. These days, clients want Rolls Royce work, and they don't want to pay Rolls Royce prices. You want to pay.
I don't think that's a novel idea, right? I think people always want the best and not to have to pay a lot for it. I had a call recently with a client, had some comments regarding a bill, and I think in those instances, it's really just meeting the client where they are, understanding, showing that level of empathy, and then just figuring it out, right? Like I'd much rather work something out, take a haircut off a bill, than try to litigate with a client, right? It's my take, and I've worked with a lot of different attorneys. Maybe I'm just jaded because I'm in South Florida. A lot of them seem to really enjoy the lawyering and not understand the business. Just like my external observation of how they communicate, the dynamic between the conversation I'm having with them and the conversation that presumably they're having with their client. It just doesn't seem like either good advice or good client control, which we didn't touch on. But there's a lot that goes into best positioning your client for resolution. And what's funny is And when I do have these deals that work out, like I was on a call very recently with an in-house attorney, super smart, sophisticated, made her points, and it was just, that's how negotiation should be. It wasn't theatrical, it wasn't threatening, it was inquisitive. I didn't write about it today, but I'm probably gonna do it tomorrow.
You mean no Rebecca Falcone from Landman, where she goes in there and she's like, you're gonna do this, and you're gonna do this, and you're gonna do this, and you're gonna like it. You know, it's more like, no, and again, look, I'm a mediator, right? One of the things that I bring into mediation is, look, the other side wants A, B, C. You want 1, 2, and 3. 1 and 2 line up. B and C line up. So we're really only talking about, you know, who's paying what under what terms. So let's get this done. And I can get a mediation done in an hour or 2 hours that other people could take 4 or 5 hours. So, you know, look, I'm all
there's
for
a lot of variables in mediation, but
yeah.
I think you and I spoke about mediation previously, that I would find that to be such grueling work.
Oh, I love it.
I know you do. I know you do. And I'm really good. You get me into mediation, like that is a superpower. Like just getting people to come to terms, like you said. But to be the mediator and go back and forth between rooms.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So here's what we're gonna do. We're going to take a quick 20-second break because we want to thank our sponsors for this show. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come back. And for those listeners that don't know, we threw out mediation and arbitration, those terms. Jeff is going to give you a quick 2-minute education on what mediation and arbitration is and what's the difference. And then we're going to go more into what he can do for you and your business. So stay tight. We'll be back in 20 seconds. We just want to thank the new streaming network and Going Bold and all the wonderful stuff that they do with us. So we are back. I am Jason Weiss at the Ask Jason Weiss show. I have with me Jeff, who is a fractional general counsel who likes to deal with not startups, but not, well, he'll deal with massive companies, but not startups. He loves the ones that already have a little bit of a foundation, know that they need a legal a person and a legal team. Nothing we say here is legal advice. It's educational and entertainment only. If you need legal or financial advice, consult an attorney directly. Now, with that being said, when we broke for our quick commercial, we were talking about mediation and arbitration. And these words are thrown around all over, right? Baseball, arbitration eligible, and they went to arbitration and all this. And then you and I talked about mediation, bouncing back from rooms. So real quick, Jeff, just explain to the viewers what's the difference between mediation and arbitration, and then after that, let us know which one you prefer or which one you like or which one you don't like and why.
All right. Well, I would kind of put those in different buckets. I would say you think of someone suing someone, right? You sue them in court, you're litigating the case. An alternative to that is arbitration, right? Where you're going before typically either a retired judge or another attorney, and that person would listen and hear the case and ultimately decide outside of the courtroom. And companies do it for various reasons. You know, if you ever look at a contract that a rental car company would give you or a hotel agreement, there's something where they have people all over the place. Seeking arbitration is beneficial because it consolidates it to maybe one court or one arbitrator with whom they have a good relationship. And that way they're not dealing with lawsuits in local counties all across the states. Mediation, and that can take place within any type of litigation, is where you're asking a third party to be the neutral, to kind of sit in the middle, hear both sides, and be oftentimes, from my experience, the grown-up in the room. And the typical tone of that conversation is, you don't like them, they don't like you, you think you're right, they think they're right. litigation is going to be expensive and uncertain, but if you settle it today, you can at least define what those terms are and not let 6 people who have no interest in hearing your case think that, you know, that you're talking about millions of dollars and they're living paycheck to paycheck, that they're the ones who are going to decide the outcome of where your money goes. You can do that, or you let some other people decide that for you.
Now, the difference there's one other key difference between mediation and arbitration, and I think you touched on it, but I'm just going to state this for the record. Arbitration, when you go to arbitration, either one arbitrator or a panel of arbitrations, they make your decision and you have to live with it just like a judge does. However, in mediation, even if you're all on board with everything except one penny difference, you could walk away. And then you still have your rights to go to arbitration or litigation or any other avenue that you want. And that's the thing that, and I hear this a lot from sophisticated clients. Why did you put a mediation clause in? We don't want to go to in front of an arbitrator and have the arbitration decide. Hey, wait a second. No. What my standard operating procedures are is there's a dispute resolution section. So before anybody runs off to court, you get into a mediation via Zoom, in person, wherever you want. We can determine all of that, and you hear each other out. Because I'd say a good percentage of the time, a lot of it just has to do with a misunderstanding. Or, look, I'm not paying your bill because you delivered 10 roof tiles and they were cracked, and we're not going to pay you, $100,000 for the roof tiles. Wait a second, hang on. There's not 10 cracked ones, it's 20 cracked ones. We're going to replace them all. We're not going to install any of the cracked ones. And if you want to hold back 5% of that $100,000 to make sure that we do it, we're golden. But we're not in breach. Oh, that's all it is? Yeah. Okay, let's proceed. You've saved litigation. You've saved the client's time, energy, money. And you're the hero just by asking a simple question. So that's how I think mediation helps. But I also agree with you that arbitration for a big company that you have it all over the place, and that's the way to go.
I'm not a huge fan of arbitration. I don't find it to save clients that much money because you're paying for an extra party, or you pay your attorney and you split the cost of the arbitrator, typically arbitrators. So any savings you might realize because it's maybe faster, or discovery isn't as broad, or there aren't the opportunities to delay as that you would get in court. I don't know. It's the level of finality to it can be challenging at times.
And I honestly think that in the past, arbitration was faster, less expensive. And I don't think, and when you talk to more seasoned professionals, they're going to be like, oh yeah, we want arbitration because it's faster and less expensive. Not anymore. I don't think it's that much faster. I don't think it's that much less expensive. But in certain areas like construction, arbitration is the way to go.
Also, it keeps it quiet, right? Which, and there's a benefit to that. So the one size fits all approach, and you mentioned AI earlier, and I find it interesting, right? When I talk to either a client or prospective client, the questions I'm asking are tailored to what I'm hearing from them, their business, where they are. And I think AI does a really good job in giving you the generic answer, right? This sounds good. But it's not necessarily the right answer for that particular question. And often it's not that AI isn't capable of it, it's that the prompts aren't on point.
Correct.
Right? The questions I ask after having done this for 17, 18 years, whatever it is, are different than the neophyte who just found himself in a situation and trying to prompt their way out of it. So it's an interesting time to do what we do. I think there's a lot of opportunity to get better at it, be more efficient, to scale. I'm not one of those that think that this entire industry is going to go by the wayside, though.
No, it is not. But and I think, again, when we were out of law school, Westlaw and Lexis, were the newest and hottest things. Like I wasn't even able to use.
Don't date me.
Okay, fine. When I got out of law school, we weren't even allowed to use Westlaw our entire first semester. We had to go into the library and actually open the books, and then they taught us how to use Westlaw. But again, it all had to do with the prompt, right? If you don't ask the right question, or you don't know how to ask the right question, or even worse, you ask the question, you get your answer, you cut and paste it, and you file it with the court. Holy cow. There's a new initiative, and I read this, I think yesterday or the day before, that federal judges are starting to require that if you use AI, you need to put that into your pleading, that this pleading was drafted with the assistance of AI. Wow. Like that's huge, because now it's going to be like, well, what do you mean by that? If I have an argument and I just want to beef it up because I don't like a word, or I don't like the way a sentence is, do I have to say that I used AI? I understand if you just go on and you say to ChatGPT, find me a case that says Jason's right and Jeff is wrong, and it comes up with Weiss versus Smith, and this is like, okay, that's made up. That doesn't work. But to go ahead and need to say that you're using AI, that I think that's going to create more problems than the intention.
Interesting times.
And again, I think AI is.
There's a lot to unpack in what you just said. It's not a bad thing for transparency and the risk-averse attorney, as you sound like when you start this conversation with, this is not legal advice, right? Attorneys are inherently risk-averse. It's probably prudent to include that. I don't think it's a bad thing to leverage AI. I think it's a bad thing to rely and not do the job that you've been engaged to do, and trust that the output is correct. Like, you wouldn't Google something, copy and paste an answer off some law firm's website that has SEO and throw it into a pleading to just blindly trust AI.
But you may Google something because of SEO, cut and paste it into Westlaw or some other, or your own database, because let's just say it says the newest case of Smith versus Jones holds and here are the implications, and you could be like, oh snap, go Westlaw, pop it in, Smith versus Jones. Okay, yeah, this applies to me. No, this doesn't apply to me. This is good. Like, again, I think AI as a tool, as a starting point, as a colleague who you would bounce something off of, I think it's the same as knocking on your door. Hey, Jeff, I got this new case, and A is suing B because of this. What do you think? And Jeff's like, oh yeah, I had a case about that. Check the firm's thing of this case from 2020 that I had, and I check it.
My memory is not that good. I asked one of my associates.
Yeah, well, but again, it's the same point. I used to do it all the time. I would go down and find the more experienced attorney and say, this is the issue. And they would be like, oh my God, I have that exact point. I researched it. I briefed it. I did whatever. Go find from my associate or my paralegal, go get the case file on da-da-da-da-da-da. And then you check it out. And it's like, this is great. But I would always tell any associate that ever worked for me, if I give you a sample pleading and I tell you that I drafted it, that means at the time I did the research, I did the writing, everything was current. Make sure it still is. And I've had associates that spit back something to me, citing my exact case, and I shepherdized it or Googled it and found out that it's no longer good law, and they didn't. And that's very, very important.
Yeah. Again, the one thing I have concern with, and I've thought quite a bit about this, so when you have all these tools, right? I think it's not that they're going to just replace people, because people are not going to be able to do it. But my concern, and I haven't really heard anyone talk about this, is the skill sets that you develop in doing what you're talking about, right? Without having that readily available tech, is that you're just not going to have the muscles developed to think without that assistance.
Yeah.
And that's going to be an interesting one. When you think about doctors, right? At some point, all doctors do is they listen to symptoms and they try to apply whichever issue it may be. If you're able to punch those same issues into a much more robust database than what the human mind has, then are you going to have doctors really looking for all those cues? I don't know. I love the tools. I iterate, I brainstorm, I'll go on walks, I'll talk, and just kind of go back and forth like it's a really smart sounding board. But I don't know, maybe I'm just confident that I've developed a bunch of skill sets and this tool's good. I just don't see it replacing. But for the younger generation who's coming in and grew up with it, are they going to be able to have the opportunity to flex those muscles? Or is the tool robbing them of that? And I don't know the answer. It's something that I think about.
And I agree with you, right? Because if you're not using it on a daily basis, or if you were never taught how to do it, then you don't know the difference. I mean, look, how many lawyers that, came out of school in 2019 and 2020 that all they've done is work from home their entire career? Do they know about going out? Do they know about marketing? Do they know about what's the benefit of having lunch with a peer? Probably not. And I think that's where we're seeing burnout from some of these attorneys because they think they're on an island alone. Same thing, right? Hey, I've done everything I can in ChatGPT. This is as far as I've gone. Well, did you hop into Westlaw? Oh man, I forgot we even have Westlaw. Don't forget.
I don't know if it's that so much as I just know that there have been times, especially early in the career, where you struggle, right? You struggle to figure something out, and you're going through all these iterations, and it's challenging, right? Like not getting something and getting your work product ripped apart, thrown back at you. Try again. Like that moment sucks because you're eating it. You're not really sure how to get yourself out of that hole, and you just keep thinking and trying and developing the muscle to think critically and how you do something better than you're doing today. And what I see is that because these tools are so readily available and they're good, that people aren't struggling, right? It's good to struggle. It's good to have to fight and figure stuff out on your own, because when I get something, it doesn't even matter what it is. So a client sends me something, I'll figure it out. Right. I don't know if I was the first to do it. If I wasn't, I was certainly one of the first. But I figured out how to do a Bitcoin transaction, helping someone buy real estate back in 2018, when Bitcoin was like, I don't know, $1,000 for a coin. So no one taught me how to do that. Like I connected with a bunch of different people and companies and learned about it, and then helped someone facilitate this transaction. But it's because I had a decade of getting my ass kicked and trying to have to figure stuff out on my own. I don't know if that happens today.
Well, it still happens today. I mean, look, like I said, dating myself, been practicing 25 years, and I just got an order from a judge in a federal case saying that you need to do more to establish the jurisdiction, right? Diversity jurisdiction. You said that it's an LLC from here and it's an LLC from here.
But I'm not talking about can you do this. What I'm talking about is, or you prefaced it with, I have 25 years of doing it.
Correct.
Right. So it's like without those reps, so that coming in every day and working on something and figuring out your own, and then those struggles, that window to have to really think through an issue, and where you don't have this amazing sounding board, like I just don't see that there's going to be opportunity to get those reps in.
Right.
No doubt you can do it. I don't know if today's brand new attorney is going to be given the opportunity to have those same challenges.
Well, that's another thing that we need to add to our resume and our to-do list, right? To go ahead and teach and show and mentor and be available for the younger attorneys. And here's my plug. I talk about that in my book, Shit They Never Taught You in Law School, and more shit they never taught you in law school. And we're laughing because I said to Jeff, the only thing I need to do is I need to plug my book before the show is over. And we're almost here. We have like 30 seconds left. I always save the hardest two questions for the end of the show. The first hardest question is, what are you watching on one of the streaming platforms that you're enjoying? And the other one is, if someone wants to reach out to you, what's the best way to do so?
Cool. Yellowstone. I'm in last season. Not happy with how things have evolved or devolved, but love the show. And LinkedIn. LinkedIn's always a good one. I'll be launching a podcast in the near term, which will be interesting, I think. So I'll announce it when it's time, but we're currently filming, and we'll certainly tap into your experiences to see if I can learn a little bit.
So for those,
build that type of audience.
So for those of you that are just listening, it's Jeffrey at PomeranzLaw.com.
You're on it.
POMERANZ law.com. And you could also find him on Pomeranz Law, POMERANZLAW.com. And you could find him as Jeffrey Pomeranz on LinkedIn. Reach out to him, tell him you saw him on the show. He'll love it, and look forward to your podcast and everything that you do. Want to thank everybody who helps this show happen. Want to thank the newstreamingnetwork.com, and thank everybody for listening today. And we're at time. Jeff, don't go anywhere. Listeners, see you in 2 weeks.